Welcome to another episode of our drift car build-off presented by Spec Clutch and Koyorad.
When you buy somebody else's race car, sometimes it comes with no interior, but we think we've got a solution for that. Normally I'm a fan of a gutted race car because lightness is good, simplicity is good, but we have a couple of challenges with this car, one of them being registering it. And to do that we need things to work like horns and turn signals and the gas gauge, none of which currently works in the car because Xander, the previous owner, seriously gutted this sucker down. I think maybe he went a little further than he was expecting. The fact that the gauge for fuel doesn't work was probably not intentional, but luckily for us, we have this parts car, and that means swapping everything out of this in terms of wiring, a lot of the interior trim, because we'd like to be able to enjoy this car on the street a little bit. We'd like to be able to drive it to the track, and so we just like to put some interior back in it so it looks more like a car, feels like more like a car, and the cops aren't going to freak out if they see us driving around in it. So swapping an interior is not a fun job. It's not something we're going to bore you with too much, so I think we're just going to get to work. You guys can watch this happen in high speed, and then we'll get back to some more interesting things after that. Welcome to our 350Z yard sale. Everything on sale for $1. Actually, no, but it came out surprisingly quickly. I think it only took us an hour and a half or so to strip this car down.
Yeah, I was really impressed, actually. There's not that much plastic, right? It's a pretty small car.
It's a two-seater, so there isn't that much interior to pull out, and it all came out without any struggle. We've got a few things left to do, like the door cards, and we've got to swap over like the window mirror motors, and some trim in the back I think we'll swap over too, just to make that car as complete as we can. But I think it's now time to start putting this stuff into the drift car. Wow, that was a big job putting an interior back in a car. Honestly, I didn't think it would be that much work, but
it's just tedious. It's always a lot of work. It's not difficult work, but it certainly takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of fussy connectors, a lot of little plastic clips that get broken.
Yeah.
When you pulled it out, you don't remember if it's the right clip to go back in that hole or not. There's like 20 different styles of clips.
But look at it, man. It looks fantastic.
It
looks like a real car again.
It looks like a street car again. Excited to have it looking so civilized in there. To add to that civility, we are swapping out this little 320 mil suede Sparco steering wheel.
I don't think there's much suede left on it. But.
Well, that's the reason we're swapping it out. That's one of the downsides to a suede racing wheel, by the way, is that they do wear out like this, especially if you're using them a lot with bare hands. They're really designed, suede is designed to be used with a racing glove that has a soft touch material on the palm, which creates a really sticky connection. Like it makes it really grippy, which is great for racing because you want that positive connection. But using suede with your bare hands gets really slippery and it wears out like this pretty quickly. So although this wheel, if it's anything like the seat, which is 06, this is also probably a 12-year-old wheel because this car has lived, I think, pretty much all its life as a drift car. So to remedy that, we went and picked up this Momo MonteCarlo in a 350 mil. So it's a bigger size, which I think is more suited to this car. It has a horn button as required to make this thing a street legal car again. And it's leather wrapped rather than suede wrapped, so it'll work better with bare hands, but it'll still work well with racing gloves. We picked this up from our friends at JRP here in Mississauga. Got the right hub for it, so we're gonna bolt this up. Then we're going to bolt in that old racing seat. There's no reason to replace it. We're not running in a series where the seat has to be up to date in terms of its build date.
Installing our Momo steering wheel is pretty easy. However, I did run into a few small issues. The nice thing about the Nissan clock spring is that it actually has this plug, which with one wire for the horn. So it's an easy install. You don't have to get into a lot of finickiness in terms of figuring out which wire is what. However, this was the plastic piece that surrounded the plug area and the clock spring area. I had to remove this in order to fit the Momo hub here, which is puzzling. I thought it looked like it would fit, but there was a bit of a, I don't know, a fitment issue somewhere. So what I did is I just depinned it, took this wire, I'm gonna hook it up right here, and then afterwards I'm gonna slide the hub on and kind of take it from there, and then we're able to just pass this through here, put this on, and connect everything. So I don't know if you guys want to give me a little bit of feedback in terms of whether I did this right. Do I have to take this off or not? Or is there some type of issue that I have? Maybe the hub is from a different model. I don't know. But this is the way it's going to work. So all I have to do is hook up the horn button and we'll be ready to go. There we go. We got ourselves a horn. We got ourselves a steering wheel. So now it is time to move on to installing this seat. Actually, no. We're not going to install the seat because I want to have the space to install gauges into our center console here.
Time to think about installing these gauges from AEM Electronics. We have gone with their X series 52 mil or 2" and 1/16 diameter gauges. As you can see, they're extremely thin, very low profile. That's a function of them having a single board in here, which allows them to be so low profile, which gives you a lot of options in terms of where you mount them. And being a standard 52 mil size means you can install them into most gauge pods. Most standard gauge pods come in that size. As a matter of fact, I think we could install them in the factory location on the center stack here, but we want the functionality of the OA gauges to remain in place. So we're going to instead install these in here. That's what we're thinking anyway, right, BT?
Yep.
Drill some holes in here, which will make it super easy because we'll be able to open this door and get at the wires on the back side. And as per usual, we have opted for oil pressure, oil temperature, and water temperature. Those are really the three critical data points that you want when you're on the racetrack, because that tells you if your motor is happy or not. So obviously if this was a turbo car or whatever, we'd put in a boost gauge, but this being NA, at least for this round of building, we figured that was the right setup for gauges. We also had AEM send us these optional bezel kits, which as you can see come with a silver bezel and a white faceplate option. And they're two-sided faceplates, so you can go from metric to, what's the American stuff called?
Imperial.
Imperial, from metric to imperial. So we're gonna use these silver bezels because the factory gauges also have silver bezels, so we think that'll match nicely. But we're gonna stick with the black faceplates because the factory gauges have black faces.
For this install, I'm gonna have to drill 3 big holes here, and I don't wanna get them wrong, so I'm gonna use some green tape, lay it down, figure out my measurements, space them out equally, and make some holes. For those of you that are wondering, this plastic trim piece came off pretty easily. I had to take a whole bunch of stuff apart here, but it does come out. I think I should be able to put that back together. So you can get at it, and the advantage of this really is, like Dave said, we have access to the gauges from the rear for wiring and whatnot, but we also get to keep this compartment, and the gauges are really right in our line of sight, so that's why I chose it here. What do you think, DP?
Good,
Gauges are in place.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on the silver. I mean, it does match, but I think a cleaner look may be the black, so
Yeah.
we may change it out later, right? Good thing
that's
it's
the
easy
beauty
to
of it.
access, so we still have a little bit of access to our cubby hole there. I don't know what we're gonna keep, but now comes the fun part of wiring all this up. So wiring up the gauges inside the car was super easy. I just found a power and a ground underneath from the ignition power. However, now running the leads that go to the sensors is a whole different story. I tried to look around this area, but because it's a double firewall, it's kind of tricky. So I was gonna try to pass it up through the main grommet for the harness, but again, I'd have to hack this up. I don't want to. So what I'm gonna do is just drill a hole right next to it and then pass the wires up through here. Okay, that wraps up the wiring here. As you can see, I had a chance to run all the wires through the hole that we drilled. The water temperature sensor was in the rad, and we needed a BSPT to NPT adapter to make that sensor work with the Koyo rad. Down below, we used the Mishimoto oil filter or sandwich adapter. We put the two AEM sensors in there. So now that the wiring is all done here, it's time to move inside and just tidy things up, and then DP can install the seat.
Let's check out the gauges. We've got readings on 2 out of 3. Not bad, not bad.
All right, well, that's something I'll have to tend to.
The sense error on the oil pressure gauge, I'm sure, will be an easy enough fix. Not too worried about that. And Pete even had this Circuit Hero shift knob kicking around from his hoard, his stash. So feels good. I like it. I think that might stay in here. And the steering wheel's perfect. I like the size of it, and I'm a MonteCarlo guy. I like my Momo MonteCarlo. I like the contouring to it, so it's good. But I will say I'm sitting awfully high. My head is basically against the roof here, and I'm high for heel and toe too. You can see my knees hitting on the steering wheel here. So that led to me doing a little investigation with the seat mounting, and there's multiple issues there. So why don't you jump over this side and we'll show you what's going on. So if you have a good look down in here, you can see the seat is mounted quite high on this bracket, and there's a slider and then a spacer to make this bottom mount seat work. This is a Sparco Fighter, which is one of Sparco's street seats. Even though it looks like a race seat, it's not an FIA approved seat. I don't believe any FIA approved seats are bottom mount. I could be wrong on that, but anyway, this is not an FIA seat. It's bottom mount only, which means it needs that spacer in there to mount it up to the slider and the bracket. So I'm gonna take the slider and this spacer out and directly mount the seat to the bracket. That's gonna give me back this, oh, I don't know, 3 inches, although I would tell my wife that's 5 inches. And that should give me enough headroom for a helmet on, and I'll be in a better position relative to the steering wheel. And really all we'll need to do is make sure that the holes in the bracket line up with the seat such that I'm in the right position in the car. Pete and I are the same height, so we shouldn't have any issues sharing the car. And for anyone else who wants to drive it that's a different height than us, tough luck. So we removed the sliders and the spacers, and we've now bolted the seat directly to the base, just using the 2 front holes because there were no rear holes that lined up with the seat mounting holes. So luckily there were 2 holes for the front. No idea how well it's gonna fit. Seat looks a little far forward visually, but once I'm in here, I've just got bolts in the front right now, and I mean, I'm a little far forward. That's clutch fully depressed. Still a bit of bend in my leg. Yeah, I am a little far forward, but I've got way more headroom, which is nice. And yeah, just a hair far forward. I'd say maybe I'd like to go back an inch or so. So let's pull this out. We'll have a look at how we can modify this seat mounting bracket so we can move the seat back an inch or so, and I think at that point we'll call it good. All right, here you can see the holes in the seat lined up with the holes in the front of the mounting bracket. That's what we just test fit, and we need the seat to go back. So we need the rail to go forward on the seat, which we can do. We've got a fair bit of room here, so we can move it forward a good 1.5 inches or so, which I think will put me in a really good position overall. Unfortunately, that means we are not lined up at all with the rear holes on the seat, which you can see are just under the corners here on this side and then kind of tucked under on that side. So I think the solution will be to take a piece of flat stock like this, weld it across where we need the holes to be located to, and we'll be good to go at that point.
All right, our bracket is done. I drilled 5 holes instead of 4, and that is because I made a slight mismeasurement. I don't know how that happened, but nevertheless, we now have all the right holes. I also painted the bracket for this to bolt flat to our seat.
Well, we've got the seat bolted in here now, and I'm definitely in a better seating position. I feel like I'm in just a better relationship to the pedals and the steering wheel now, so got room to swing my leg underneath here for heel and toe downshifts, and I don't feel like I'm, a little bit too jammed in. There you have it. Black bezels are back on, and I think I prefer them to the silver, being that it's in a black background. I find they just kind of blend in better, look a little more natural.
I agree. I mean, the silver did match the other.
Yeah, like on the HVAC controls, it's silver,
it
and
looked goofy there.
It didn't look right there. And I know we're planning to put a radio back in here, which is why we've not put the gauges in down here. But aesthetically speaking, these might have looked better down here. But I like that
but
these
then
are
they're not
up in the line of sight.
Yeah, that's the
nice.
whole thing. If you're building a show car,
you're more naturally going to see a gauge up the higher it is in your field of view. I do like them from that standpoint, and the fact that they have both the sort of like green line that goes around the exterior of the gauge, and then the central LED. It kind of, there's going to be enough going on there that it'll catch my eye if we have a warning going off. That's my hope, anyways, that they're up in the right spot for that. So, yeah, let us know in the comment section. Maybe we'll even run a poll to see if you guys think we should go silver bezel or black bezel. Interior is a wrap. It's looking like a real car in there now, which is exciting. It's luxurious. It's a luxurious drift car. And before we call this episode officially a wrap, we do have one more thing we want to do for you guys, and this is actually, it came in via special request. Someone messaged me on Facebook about it, wondering about fitting these 18 by 10.5 inch wide wheels that we're running on the rear on the front of his Z. He's got a grip setup Z. He wants to fit as much wheel and tire in the front of his car as he can. So he's wondering if those will fit. So we figured, quick and easy for us to check that out. So let's do that now and see if it's gonna rub or not. Here we have it, 18 by 10.5 plus 18 offset. Well,
man,
it's aggressive.
It
is aggressive.
That is tight, but with a bit of camber work, I don't see that being an issue, DP.
Yeah, I think those would work with the right amount
we've got
of camber.
stock arms, right?
We do have stock arms, yeah, so we don't have a lot of camber in the front of this car. That may be something we have to address in the future, but yeah, I feel like these would work fine with camber. And keep in mind, this is only a 255, so there's some fair bit of stretch in the sidewall here, which is going to help clear the fender. You can also feel that the fenders have not been rolled at all, so with a bit of a fender roll, and as long as you don't go too aggressive on the tire sizing, I think this is going to work well. With some camber, I think you could go up to a 265 or a 275 and still make these fit. So for grip setup, I think these could actually work really well on all four corners. I think we're calling it a wrap on another episode on Zed, my 350Z drift car. Things are getting really close. In fact, I think next episode we're gonna go for a rip in this thing, but before we do that, we need to bleed the coolant, which is known to be a bit of a nightmare with these VQs, so we'll see how that goes. Then we need to take it over to NV Auto for an alignment, because after swapping the suspension over everything, we don't know what the alignment's at, and frankly, we wanna give it a proper drift spec alignment, which those guys can give us a lesson on, since they have a Pro 2 Formula Drift car. They know all about aligning these kinds of cars. And then we're gonna go rip some rev up. I wanna say VTEC so badly, Pete, but there's no VTEC here, is there?
It's VQ life.
VQ life, so we'll go rip some VQ around the street, maybe do a skid or two for you, and then it's on to our E46 M3 Cabriolet, get that thing to where this thing is, and then we can go and do some proper skid racing. This is not new stuff. This is 12-year-old stuff. So some of you in the comments were like, why are you taking off perfectly good parts and putting on other parts? It's because this stuff's all 12 years old. So we need to put fresh stuff on it so that it's safe and functioning properly.